The impossible dream wasn't supposed to exist. According to every engineering manual in known space, the sleek vessel with its mismatched hull plates and impossibly integrated alien technologies should have torn itself apart the moment it tried to enter hyperspace. Captain Sarah Chen liked it that way. "Status report," she called out, watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace through the bridge's panoramic viewport. The view was enhanced by sensor arrays from 3 different alien civilizations, working together in ways their original designers would have deemed impossible. Lieutenant James Jazz Harrison looked up from his console, which appeared to be partially built from an old coffee machine and what might have been a toaster. "All systems functioning at 127% efficiency, Captain. The quantum probability drive is purring like a kitten, though Dr. Tazar's equations suggest that's mathematically impossible." "Excellent." Sarah smiled, remembering the Axiary physicist's reaction when he'd seen their engine room. The poor alien had needed 3 cycles of meditation to stop twitching. "Any sign we're being followed?" "Negative, though our sensor range is interesting today." Jazz tapped his displays. "The quantum harmonics are resonating with that piece of crystal we found in the abandoned mining station. According to these readings, we can now see 5 minutes into the future, but only on Tuesdays. Log it for R&D. They love when we break physics in new and exciting ways." The bridge crew chuckled, each of them veterans of humanity's unique approach to space exploration. While other species meticulously calculated every variable and followed established scientific principles, humans had discovered that the universe was far more flexible than anyone had imagined. A warning tone chimed, and Lieutenant Maya Patel's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, we've got company coming out of hyperspace. Big signatures, definitely military. Configuration matches Axiary Empire vessels." Sarah straightened in her command chair, which she'd salvaged from a luxury yacht and modified with inertial dampeners from 3 different species. "Battle stations, everyone. Let's show the Empire why human ships give their engineers nightmares." 3 Axiary warships emerged from hyperspace, their crystalline hulls gleaming with mathematical precision. Each vessel was identical, built to exacting specifications that the Empire considered the only proper way to construct spacecraft. The main viewscreen activated, revealing the stern face of Commander Vixthar. His crystalline features arranged themselves into what the Axiary considered a diplomatic expression. "Unidentified vessel, you are operating in Imperial space. Our scans indicate your ship violates 73 fundamental laws of physics. Power down immediately and prepare for inspection." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Impossible Dream. We're conducting peaceful research in this sector." "Research?" Vixthar's crystalline features flickered with what might have been confusion. "Your ship's power core appears to be. Is that a modified food replicator connected to a quantum surge regulator?" "Oh, that old thing." Sarah grinned. "Maya got it working last week. Turns out if you reverse the polarity and run it through a coffee maker, you can get some interesting results." The sound that emerged from the Axiary commander might have been a suppressed scream. "This is an outrage. Your vessel defies all known laws of engineering. It cannot exist." "Funny thing about impossible," Sarah said, nodding to her crew. "Humans tend to treat it more like a suggestion than a rule. Maya, show them what that food replicator can really do." The Impossible Dream's engines hummed to life, energy signatures from a dozen different species technologies merging in ways that caused the Axiary sensors to short-circuit. Warning klaxons blared on the Imperial vessels as their computers tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "By the crystal matrix," Vixthar breathed, "what have you done to that ship?" "This." Sarah gestured around her bridge. "This is just human ingenuity at work. Watch this." She turned to her helm officer. "Jazz, activate the Murphy drive." The Impossible Dream's rear section lit up as improvised propulsion units crafted from modified waste disposal systems kicked in. The ship shot forward, leaving behind a trail of safely contained plasma that spelled out, "Have a nice day," in slowly dispersing energy particles. As they accelerated away from the befuddled Imperial vessels, Sarah could hear Vixthar shouting something about mathematical impossibilities and violations of fundamental engineering principles. Her crew burst into laughter as the impossible dream jumped to FTL speeds, using a drive system that incorporated parts from a vintage pinball machine. Log entry. Sarah spoke to her hybrid computer system. First contact with the Axiari Empire went about as expected. Recommend updating their engineering manuals. They seem a bit limited in their thinking. Also, need to grab more duct tape at the next port. She paused, considering. And maybe a few spare coffee makers. You never know when you'll need to break physics in a hurry. The impossible dream disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind 3 Imperial warships and one very confused commander who would spend the next 3 cycles trying to explain to High Command how a ship that defied the laws of physics had simply walked away from the Empire's finest. The news of the impossible dream's encounter spread through the Axiari Empire like a quantum probability wave, leaving confusion and outrage in its wake. For a species that prided itself on mathematical precision and adherence to physical laws, the human vessel represented something unprecedented and deeply threatening. Admiral Corell stood before the Imperial Science Council, his crystalline form rigid with barely contained frustration. The humans must be stopped. Their very existence threatens the fundamental order of the universe. Their latest incursion involves a fleet of 15 vessels, he continued, projecting a hologram of human ships that made several council members recoil in horror. Each one violates our laws of physics in unique and increasingly impossible ways. In the vast expanse of the Carina Nebula, that very fleet of human vessels moved in formation. Though formation might have been too generous a term for their seemingly chaotic arrangement, the impossible dream led the group, flanked by ships that looked like they'd been assembled from spare parts and impossible dreams. Captain Sarah Chen surveyed the tactical display on her bridge, watching as her fleet's energy signatures danced and shifted in patterns that would give any conventional sensor operator seizures. Status report on the Imperial fleet. 30 warships incoming. Jazz reported, his console now sporting what appeared to be a modified lava lamp that somehow improved their sensor resolution. Standard Imperial crystal matrix configuration. They're moving in textbook perfect formation. Textbook perfect is textbook predictable, Sarah mused. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Remember the plan. Operation Physics Optional is now in effect. Let's show the Empire why humans got banned from the last 3 galactic engineering conferences. The human fleet burst into action, each ship performing maneuvers that should have torn them apart. The U.S. MacGyver, commanded by Captain Raj Patel, activated its probability bypass drive, which allowed it to exist in 3 places simultaneously by exploiting a loophole in quantum mechanics they'd discovered by accident. The jury rig, under Commander Maria Santos, engaged its chaos engine, a power system that ran on pure entropy and occasionally produced unlimited energy as a side effect. According to Imperial physics, it had a 643% chance of catastrophic failure every time it activated. It had been running flawlessly for 3 years. Admiral Curl's voice crackled over the command channel, a note of desperation in his typically controlled tone. Human vessels, you are in violation of 78 separate laws of physics. Power down immediately or face the consequences. Admiral. Sarah responded cheerfully. I'm afraid we'll have to respectfully decline. You see, we've just finished installing our new defensive system. Maya, want to show them what happens when you cross a shield generator with a karaoke machine. In engineering, Chief Engineer Maya Patel grinned as she initiated the sequence. Ready when you are, Captain. The quantum harmonics are perfectly aligned with the chorus of Don't Stop Believin'. The impossible dream's hull began to glow with an impossible energy field that spread to encompass the entire human fleet. The Imperial sensors trying to analyze it crashed, and had to be rebooted 3 times. By the crystal matrix, Krell breathed. That's not possible. You know, Sarah replied, we get that a lot. Jazz, activate the Murphy Protocol. The human fleet move is one. They're impossibly modified ships creating a cascade of physics violations that caused local space-time to briefly consider becoming a contemporary dance performance. The Imperial fleet's perfect formation broke as their targeting computers suffered collective nervous breakdowns trying to predict the unpredictable. The MacGyver phased through an Imperial cruiser, leaving behind a trail of quantum confetti and a crew of very confused auxiliary engineers. The jury rig performed a maneuver that briefly convinced nearby space that it was actually Tuesday next week, causing 3 Imperial ships to fire at where the human vessel would have been if the laws of physics were still speaking to them. Status report. Krell demanded from his flagship. Sir, his sensor operator responded, voice trembling. The humans are. There. The officer paused, crystals flickering in distress. Sir, they're breaking physics faster than our computers can document the violations. The ship at coordinates 227 Mark III just turned its waste heat into strawberry-scented energy sculptures. Sarah watched with satisfaction as the Imperial fleet struggled to adapt to human innovation. All ships, execute Operation Grand Final. Let's give them something to really think about. The 15 human vessels moved into what appeared to be a random scatter, but was actually a precisely calculated pattern, precisely calculated to make absolutely no sense to conventional physics. Each ship activated its unique impossible drive simultaneously, creating a cascading wave of reality-bending energy that rippled through space. The Imperial fleet found itself caught in a web of quantum improbabilities. Ships that were mathematically certain of their positions suddenly weren't sure if they were actually ships at all. Weapon systems that had been calibrated to 15 decimal places began producing results that could only be expressed in interpretive dance. Log entry. Sarah spoke as the Imperial fleet retreated in disarray, leaving behind a debris field of broken physical laws and shattered certainties. Tactical encounter with Imperial forces concluded successfully. Note: Maya's karaoke-powered shield generator exceeded expectations. Recommend adding more songs to the database. Also, the Murphy Protocol continues to prove that anything that can go wrong for the enemy will go wrong for the enemy, especially if you engineer it that way. As the human fleet regrouped, preparing to jump to their next destination, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The universe, they had discovered, wasn't nearly as rigid as some species believed. Sometimes all it took was a little human creativity, a lot of impossible engineering, and the willingness to try things that every textbook said wouldn't work. And perhaps a few spare karaoke machines, just in case. Deep within the Impossible Dreams engineering section, Chief Engineer Maya Patel stood surrounded by holographic displays showing readings that would make any conventional physicist have an existential crisis. Her workspace resembled what might happen if a tornado hit a tech museum and then decided to reorganize everything according to laws of physics that hadn't been invented yet. "Pass me the quantum spanner," she called to her assistant, Alex Rodriguez, who was half buried in what appeared to be a fusion reactor crossed with a vintage jukebox. And maybe that box of paperclips. I have an idea. The Impossible Dream had taken shelter in an uncharted nebula after their recent encounter with the Imperial fleet. The swirling gases outside provided perfect cover, though Maya had also figured out how to make the ship's hull temporarily convince light that it had better things to do than reflect off their surface. "Chief." Alex emerged from the machinery, his face smudged with luminescent reactor residue. "The probability matrix is showing some interesting readings. According to this, we're simultaneously here, there, and last Thursday." Maya grinned, her eyes lighting up with the kind of enthusiasm that made senior physics professors wake up in cold sweats. "Perfect. That means the temporal recursion loop is working exactly as intended. Or not intended. With this system, it's hard to tell the difference." The ship's intercom crackled to life with Captain Chen's voice. "Engineering, We're picking up some unusual energy signatures. The Empire might have found a way to track our physics violations. Already on it, Captain. Maya responded, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that flickered between different dimensional states. I've been working on something new. Remember how we discovered that quantum entanglement works better if you explain the experiment to the particles using interpretive dance? How could I forget? The demonstration at the last science conference caused 3 auxiliary theoretical physicists to retire on the spot. Maya moved to what looked like a standard engineering console, though closer inspection would reveal it was partially constructed from an antique pinball machine and what might have been a waffle iron. Well, I've been thinking about their crystal matrix technology. It's incredibly rigid, precise, and predictable. But what if we could make our ship's quantum state so confused that their sensors can't decide if we're actually here? Back aboard the Impossible Dream, Maya's latest project was taking shape. The engineering bay had been transformed into what looked like a cross between a high-tech laboratory and a modern art installation. The key, she explained to her team as they worked, is that we're not trying to break the laws of physics. We're just suggesting alternative interpretations. It's like when you tell a strict teacher that technically, you didn't break any rules. You just found a creative way to interpret them. Alex watched as she connected what appeared to be a lava lamp to their main power grid, and this will help us avoid Imperial detection. Better than that, Maya's eyes sparkled with mischief. This little setup is going to make their sensors think we're simultaneously a ship, a quantum probability cloud, and a very confused toaster. I call it the Schrödinger starship effect. The device hummed to life, sending ripples of impossibility through the ship's systems. On the bridge, Jads reported with amusement that their sensor profile now appeared to be broadcasting an interpretive dance. Captain Chen's voice came through again. Maya, whatever you just did, the Imperial sensor probe that was trying to track us just sent back a report consisting entirely of question marks and what appears to be an existential crisis in binary code. Perfect. Maya made some final adjustments. I've also been working on a new propulsion concept. Remember how we discovered that probability particles behave differently if you play them classical music? Please tell me you didn't. Oh, I did. I call it the Mozart drive. It convinces quantum particles to tunnel us through spacetime, but only if we maintain a strict 4-4 time signature. We're currently traveling at the speed of Allegro Moderato. The engineering team celebrated their latest triumph, even as alarms indicated more Imperial ships entering the sector. Maya looked at her creation with pride. In a universe that insisted on mathematical precision and rigid laws, humanity had found their greatest strength in asking what if, and then refusing to accept that's impossible as an answer. Log entry, engineering. Maya spoke as she prepared for their next impossible innovation. Note to self, need to requisition more paperclips, quantum stabilizers, and maybe a theremin. Also, someone please tell Science Lab 3 that just because their experiment proved time is actually shaped like a Mobius strip doesn't mean they can take next week's coffee breaks yesterday. The Imperial High Command Chamber was silent as Admiral Krell delivered his report. The crystalline walls, usually shimmering with perfect mathematical precision, seemed to flicker with uncertainty. The human vessels continue to defy our understanding, Krell stated, his voice tight with frustration. They are not merely violating physical laws. They are rewriting them. Our standard tactics have proven insufficient. High Commander Extal's crystalline form pulsed with barely contained anger. Then we shall overcome their chaos with overwhelming order. Deploy the Grand Fleet, all of it. Across human space, warnings spread as fast as quantum entanglement would allow. The Imperial Grand Fleet, over 300 vessels of crystalline perfection, had begun to move. Each ship was identical, built to specifications so precise they could be measured to the atomic level. Aboard the Impossible Dream, Captain Sarah Chen called an emergency meeting of her rapidly growing fleet. The bridge's holographic displays showed representatives from 30 human vessels, each more impossible than the last. "They're coming in force," Sarah announced, studying the tactical projections. 300 ships, all built to Imperial specifications. 300 identical ships. Maya's voice carried a note of amusement from engineering. "Captain, they're making this too easy. It's like they haven't learned anything about how humans approach problems." Commander Maria Santos of the jury rig spoke up, her hologram flickering as her ship's reality phase shifted slightly. "We've been working on something new. Remember that quantum tunneling effect we discovered when someone accidentally played dubstep in the engine room? The one that made us briefly exist in 5 dimensions. Exactly. We've refined it. Now we can control which dimensions we slip into. Mostly. Sometimes we end up in what we think is next Tuesday, but we're pretty sure we can weaponize that." The human fleet, now 40 vessels strong, prepared for the coming battle. Each ship was unique, a testament to human creativity, and the stubborn refusal to accept impossibility as an answer. The impossible dream had been joined by vessels like the Quantum Quandary, whose engine core ran on pure mathematical paradoxes, and the Murphy's Law, which had somehow weaponized coincidence. Admiral Corell stood on his flagship's bridge as the Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The tactical display showed the human fleet arranged in what his analysts insisted couldn't possibly be a formation because it defied several laws of geometry. "Their fleet is significantly smaller than ours," his tactical officer reported. "However, our sensors are having difficulty maintaining locks. According to these readings, several of their ships are simultaneously here or there, and, last Thursday." "Open a channel," Corell ordered. The view screen activated to show Captain Chen's bridge, which appeared to be partially phasing through multiple reality states. "This is your final warning," Corell announced. "Your violations of physical law end today. Surrender, and we will ensure your ships are properly dismantled according to established scientific principles." Sarah leaned back in her command chair, which now appeared to be generating its own localized gravity field. "Admiral, has it occurred to you that maybe the universe is a bit more flexible than your equations suggest? Maya, show them what we've been working on." The human fleet suddenly shifted, each ship activating drives and systems that caused Imperial sensors to register everything from quantum superposition to temporal displacement. The Murphy's Law began generating a field of weaponized improbability, causing several Imperial ships to experience highly improbable mechanical failures. The Quantum Quandary engaged its uncertainty drive, making it impossible for Imperial targeting systems to determine both its position and velocity simultaneously. The harder their sensors tried to lock on, the more uncertain its location became. "Status report," Corell demanded as his perfect formation began to break under the strain of trying to combat ships that refused to follow the rules of reality. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice was strained, "the humans are. There." The officer paused, crystals flickering in distress. "They're breaking physics faster than we can document the violations. The ship at coordinates 227 Mark III just turned its waste heat into a synchronized swimming performance." Maya's voice came over the command channel, clearly enjoying herself. "You know, Admiral, the funny thing about physics is that it's a lot like jazz. Sure, you can follow the sheet music exactly, but where's the fun in that? Sometimes you need to improvise." As if to emphasize her point, the Impossible Dream's new drive system activated, creating a cascade of quantum effects that rippled through space. Imperial sensors registered the ship in 50 different locations simultaneously, each one generating its own set of impossible readings. "Their entire approach defies logic," Corell's science officer declared. "According to our calculations, their ships should be exploding, imploding, and turning into various types of quantum soup, possibly all at once." "That's the thing about human engineering," Sarah responded cheerfully. "We've found that if you don't tell the laws of physics they're being broken, sometimes they don't notice. It's amazing what you can accomplish with a little creativity, some duct tape, and a complete disregard for what's supposed to be impossible. The battle was quickly becoming less of a military engagement and more of a referendum on reality itself. Human ships danced through space in patterns that made geometry question its life choices, while Imperial vessels struggled to maintain their perfect formation against an enemy that treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. As the battle reached its crescendo, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The Imperial Grand Fleet's perfect formation had devolved into chaos as they tried to counter human innovations that shouldn't exist. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued to perform maneuvers that made reality question its career choices. Maya, Sarah called from the bridge of the impossible dream. Please tell me that crazy idea you mentioned earlier is ready. Almost there, Captain. Maya's voice carried over the sound of what might have been quantum mechanics having a philosophical debate with classical physics. Alex, hand me that spare coffee maker and the quantum probability inducer, and maybe that rubber duck. I have a theory about wave functions. The Imperial flagship Crystal Perfection hung in space, its sensors struggling to make sense of the battle unfolding around it. Admiral Corell watched in mounting horror as his perfect fleet was systematically undone by ships that treated the laws of physics like optional guidelines. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human vessels are reconfiguring somehow. Their energy signatures are becoming increasingly nonsensical. Indeed, the human fleet had begun to move into what appeared to be a formation, though calling it that would make any self-respecting geometric mathematician cry. Each ship seemed to occupy a point in space that was simultaneously impossible and exactly where it needed to be. Now, Maya, Sarah ordered. In engineering, Maya activated her latest creation, a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, dreams, and a complete disregard for what should and shouldn't be possible, initiating the infinite improbability resonance cascade. I always wanted to say that. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Each human ship began generating fields of pure impossibility, their technologies harmonizing in ways that made local space-time consider taking up interpretive dance as a career alternative. The quantum quandary's paradox core synchronized with the Murphy's Law's coincidence field, while the jury-rig's chaos engine provided the background rhythm. What are they doing? Corell demanded as his sensors began displaying readings in interpretive poetry. The answer came as the human fleet's combined impossible technologies created something even more impossible, a synchronized quantum harmony that made the very fabric of reality pause for a moment to appreciate the audacity of it all. You know, Admiral, Sarah's voice came through clear on all channels. We humans have a saying. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, but we prefer. Any sufficiently analyzed magic is indistinguishable from technology. The universe isn't as rigid as you think it is. The combined effect of 40 human ships, each breaking physics in their own unique way, while harmonizing with each other, created what Maya would later describe in her technical report as a localized zone of negotiable reality. Imperial ships found their perfectly calibrated systems responding to laws of physics that were now more like polite suggestions. This is impossible, Corell shouted, watching as his fleet's crystal matrix technology began responding to the human-generated field of improbability. Impossible is just another way of saying you haven't tried hard enough. Maya responded cheerfully. By the way, you might want to check your engine calibration. We've temporarily convinced local spacetime that your crystal matrix technology works best if you sing to it, preferably in harmony. The Imperial Grand Fleet, pride of the Axiari Empire and testament to their belief in perfect predictable physics, found itself caught in a web of human-generated impossibility. Ships that had been designed to operate with mathematical precision were suddenly experiencing effects that could only be described through interpretive dance. Sir, Corell's science officer reported, their crystalline form flickering with distress. The humans aren't just breaking the laws of physics anymore. They're negotiating with them and winning. Sarah stood on her bridge, watching as the Imperial fleet's perfect formation dissolved into confusion. "You know, Admiral, maybe it's time we had a real discussion about the nature of possibility. Maya, show them what happens when you cross a quantum uncertainty field with a karaoke machine." The resulting display of technological impossibility was so spectacular that 3 different physics textbooks spontaneously rewrote themselves. The Imperial fleet found itself in a situation where their rigid adherence to physical laws had become a liability rather than an advantage. "We yield," Carell finally announced, his voice carrying the weight of a paradigm shift. It seems we may have been somewhat limited in our understanding of what's possible." As the Imperial fleet began their withdrawal, Sarah recorded her final log entry on the incident. "First major engagement with the Axiari Empire has concluded successfully." Note: Maya's theory about the relationship between quantum mechanics and musical theory has proven surprisingly effective. Also, recommend updating all engineering manuals to include a section on the importance of imagination in spacecraft design, and maybe an appendix on the practical applications of karaoke in quantum physics. The human fleet regrouped, each ship glowing with the satisfaction of having proven that impossible was just another word for hasn't been tried yet. In engineering, Maya was already sketching plans for her next impossible innovation, while Alex carefully fed the rubber duck that had somehow become quantum entangled with their probability drive. "You know what the best part is?" Maya mused as she worked. "We've just convinced an entire empire that their understanding of physics was too rigid. Imagine what they'll come up with once they learn to think outside the crystal matrix." As the impossible dream led the fleet home, Sarah couldn't help but smile. In a universe of infinite possibilities, humanity had found its niche, not in adhering to the rules, but in finding creative ways to bend them. After all, any species could follow the laws of physics. It took a special kind of creativity to sit down with those laws and negotiate a better deal. And somewhere in Imperial space, a young Axiari engineer looked at their perfectly calibrated instruments and, for the first time, wondered, what if?